My name is Romain Cura. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at Geography Research Lab in Paris, France, and I am glad to present an ongoing research where my co-authors and myself are studying music listening practices. Our presentation is named Uplifting Interviews in Social Science Research with Individual Data Visualizations, and it is built on the case of music listening practices. Our research is part of the RECORD project that aims at analyzing music streaming practices evolutions over the past years, with a specific focus on the social stratifications of cultural and digital practices. To study these issues, we conceived an original qualitative methodological framework to combine different information sources. The first information sources have been gathered with the help of the Deezer music streaming company that logs all the actions of their users when they listen to music. For every Deezer users, we have access to what, when, and to some extent to where they listen to music. We also asked to a sample of Deezer users, using a web survey, around 50 questions about their cultural practices in a wide sense. This includes their TV and radio consuming habits, their musical and dance practices, but also the social context in which they do listen to music. This case study concerns the collect of the last source of information, that is, sociological interviews. We decided to conduct 100 qualitative sociological interviews with a sample of the survey respondents. The whole issue about those interviews was that we had direct information about the users and that we wanted to handle these assets to get a deeper and more precise knowledge of them. The main concern of this case study is to relate the way that we use the different informations to assist social science researchers into conducting what we call augmented interviews. In these augmented interviews, we are mixing qualitative surveys answers with quantitative streaming logs data to provide the interviewers with individual data visualizations about their users. This helps them to prepare and conduct their interviews by portraying insights about who they are interviewing. To help the interviewers into collecting those insights about their interviewees, we designed an application that we named Ampli for Amplifying Music Listening Practices Studies with logs augmented interviews. The Ampli application is made of 3 independent parts. The main one is the static report that combines information from both the user's logs and their survey answers in the shape of tables and plots. Inside this tab, the researcher can find multiple tabs that correspond to different modules of the interview guide. For an illustration, we can look at the profile of one user that we did interview. In the socio-demographic part, we can learn that this user is a woman of 25 years and that she's living in the French island of La Réunion. By looking at her listening context, and especially to the origin of her streams, we can realize that the user did mostly use the recommender system in 2017 and that she's since made a steady switch to mostly organic music. This means that she's now more into the choice of the music she listens to than before. By looking at the musical genre that this user listens to, we can also notice a trend over the years that she's been listening to more and more hip-hop music over the year. We can finally look at her musical tastes and realize that her most listened artists are mainly French hip-hop, while her top songs are more eclectic. If the researcher don't know the songs, it's also possible to quickly listen to those inside Ampli. The second part of the application is dedicated to summarize all the users' answers to the survey. It mainly consists in tables with a dedicated style to speed up the reading, like in this example. This question is about the musical genre that the users declare listening to, and we can get a quick grasp of her answers that seems to be consistent with the effective behavior that we saw in the logs. The last part of Ampli is more interactive and exploratory. It relies on the cross-filtering different dimensions of the user's logs to discover patterns or specific events. In the case of this user, we can notice that while most of the streams were made in France, some other areas can be noticed in the heat map. By selecting one of those areas, the researchers can get insights about where and when the user spends time, and also on the types of music listened here. We can notice that this user spent 3 months in Southeast Asia in the end of 2019, and that she listened to more alternative music during this time than usual. all the patterns and hints that a researcher finds in Ampli when preparing the interviews can lead to specific questions to be asked during the interview and can also be used to engage in a more specific discussion with the interviewees.
To evaluate Ampli effective use, we gathered basic user statistics that confirm our forecasts. The most used parts of Ampli are indeed the ones that were the most asked for and that were the most improved with back and forth iterations. Among those, we expected the listening practices, musical genres, and user taste modules to be the most consulted, but we are also surprised by the relatively high use of the survey and exploration part of the application. As relying on the statistics is biased by different kinds of use of Ampli, we mainly focused our evaluation work on qualitative feedback. First of all, we organized feedback sessions with our users that resulted in a typology of their use cases. If all the users reported using Ampli as it was designed for, we also noticed some unexpected uses. For example, the user decided to share his screen with his interviewees to show them their logs and elicitate the interview. Ampli has also been used consistently as a fact-checking tool, both during the interview and afterwards to verify the interviewee's discourse consistency. Our second approach to a more database qualitative evaluation has been focused on analyzing the transcripts of the interviews through a systematic encoding of when and why Ampli was used and what it resulted in. We defined the gradient of the efficiency of Ampli in terms of the outcomes of its use. From simple correction or explicitation of a practice to the production of unexpected and intimate discourse, we can assume that Ampli resulted in a frequent deepening of the interview's content. For example, as seen in the demonstration, asking Sabine about her frequent travels worldwide, as noticed in Ampli, allowed our user to realize that traveling and discovering new musical genres was a big part of her life. We can conclude by saying that overall, our users agree that using Ampli helped them in conducting better interviews. Ampli allowed to reach a deeper level of discourse than they usually face. The unexpected use case, especially the gamification and the interactive sharing of Ampli, made us realize that we had to think about a companion tool devoted to a few visualizations with the interview. We're still working on the interview's transcript analysis and want to have it reviewed and commented by our users so that they can confirm or deny the specific impact of using Ampli. We're having a few leads on how to run a more rigorous quantitative evaluation, but we are also wondering, in such a context with a few users, how to disentangle the effect of Ampli as a specific tool from the effects of just exploring the noise. If you have any idea about this or any questions related to our talk, we would be glad to discuss it with you. And anyway, we want to thank you for listening to our talk.